Access to medical care is becoming more and more of an issue here in Guam, and it doesn't even matter if you have the ability to pay. It's getting harder to see a doctor, to get an appointment, or to get the specialty care that you need. So I want to show you a growing solution to a growing problem. They're going to go out of their way to help find you a solution. And they've been growing their clinical services. Aside from this place looking and feeling homely, like this is their waiting area. Like, I don't think that people really understand that they do full clinical services here. Like, this is one of their clinical rooms. Look how nice it is. You get your vision exam here. So do you need to see an OBGYN, get family medicine done, internal medicine done? This is all stuff that's done here at the Total Guam Foundation. And just to tell you again, this place is not for profit. This is the psychologist's office. Yes, they have a psychology department. They also do psychiatry. It's an entire mental health department that they have here on top of all the other clinical services that they provide. If you need medical care, if you're having problems getting a doctor, getting an appointment, call the Todu Guam Foundation at 649-TODU or 649-8638. You can visit. Welcome to this new week. It is Sunday, the 31st of May, 2026. I'm chewing on bread. It's just my breakfast. I have to eat before 9 a.m. because church is at 10. You know the rule. You're not supposed to have anything to eat an hour before church starts. Good morning. It's Sunday. This is the Sunday News Analysis, and my name is Troy Torres. This morning, I want to talk about. So, my day off was yesterday. I wasn't able to do any news, do anything about. I mean, I was able to, but I chose not to because I wanted my day off. Friday night, we got the big news coming out of the Supreme Court of Guam that the justices have ruled in favor of Governor Lulian Guerrero in one of the court cases. So I want to talk about that ruling. I want to talk about the amount of money left over in this pot that we all thought was $104 million and it was going to stay there. But all of a sudden it dropped to $83.5 million. And so the question of what was that money used for? And how were we able to use that money for something else when the governor's office this entire time has been telling us we can't use the money for anything else? And so what's the impetus for that? We'll talk about that. And then I want to talk about, because the governor has said, according to a report by Joe Taitano in the Pacific Daily News, that, we're going to lose millions of dollars. Well, I want to talk about whose fault that is. And some people might say, never mind placing the blame or whatever, but we're talking about millions of dollars. So we're absolutely going to place blame. We'll get to these things on the other side of the commercial break. But before that, let me just tell you, it's my bread. It's that Dave's Killer Power Seed bread. The one with the protein and all of the different, it has different seeds and stuff. It's very good for you. And it tastes good too. My dad used to eat it. My dad was the one who turned me on to that. He died back in right before the pandemic. He died in 2019. Anyway, so yesterday was my day off, right? And it's just a little personal story as we go into this new week, right? And what really matters about Sunday and about our lives. So I got to wake up late. I woke up at 7 in the morning. It felt really good to have that much sleep and just to wake up when I wanted to wake up. And as I do every morning, I try to, the very first thought in my head is to do the sign of the cross. And then if I'm able to, shake off the fuzziness of the night, I'm able to have a proper prayer, right? Where I'm relatively in control of my thoughts and I pray, whatever. So because I got a lot of sleep, I was very thankful and all that stuff, right? And the next thing I do after I pray is I pick up my phone and I see what messages I have missed overnight or early in the morning from WhatsApp. And I got this one message from somebody that was ugly. It was an ugly message, right? And I did the worst thing that I could do. The inside me, the person who is the Troy who resides inside here, came to the surface for the first time in a long time. And I responded in that kind of way. I've since apologized to the person. I've since said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But the reason I bring it up is because it's Sunday and I'll be going to mass. And this morning, my number one priority this morning is going to confession before mass starts, because I said I'm sorry. I don't know if I made it right. I don't think I mean, like, once it's out, right? Is there any justice in that? Can there be any justice from something? But it was pretty bad. Like, what I said was not nice to this person. And so, yeah, I need to have my confession today. I just wanted to share that as a personal note before heading into the first commercial break, and then we'll come back to what we'll talk about first is the Supreme Court case and how the governor won that case, and then we'll move from there. Stick with us on the other side of this break. We'll get right to that.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Welcome back to the Sunday News Analysis. My name is Troy Torres, and it is Sunday, May 31, 2026. Oh, I didn't do this all the way. May 31, 2026. And here's the thing. On Friday night, the governor's office released news that the Supreme Court had ruled in the governor's favor regarding a request for declaratory judgment that she gave, or that she submitted to the court, which essentially asks whether the legislature can give to the attorney general a veto power over the governor's authority under the Organic Act to establish hospitals and public health services. And this goes to the heart of the whole Manilao medical campus. Now, full disclosure, I have for the past couple of years been a big supporter of her vision. Like, I'm not a big supporter of the administration. I have a whole lot of criticism and scrutiny about the administration, about all these different things, right? And of course, scrutiny about how they've handled Guam Memorial Hospital as well over the years. But that doesn't mean that everything that Governor Luliang Guerrero does or wants to do, I think, is a bad thing. Just being an objective person, I like her vision for a new Guam Memorial Hospital, and I want to disclose that as one of my biases in this discussion. And I really have no problem with her Manilao thing. I don't have a problem either with Ipao Point as a place for the new hospital. If you can show to me that there's good ambulance services, and we always have enough ambulances and medics, and there's going to be great transportation, especially some sort of an artery, a main artery that would get you directly to Guam Memorial Hospital. I don't care if you build it on Cocos Island. Just build a darn hospital, because the past two governors, Governor Eddie Calvo and now Governor Luliang Guerrero, go through 8 years of their administrations, and whoever the powers who are don't want them to build hospitals. And it's just the craziest thing to me. And as the months and the years go by, the cost of building this hospital is going to go up and up and up. So the same people who have been against building a hospital for whatever reason back in the Calvo administration, who would now use the argument, oh, it's just so expensive, it's too expensive to build now. Well, I mean, you are partly responsible for it being this expensive, because if it weren't for you, we would have built this hospital back in the Calvo administration, and it wouldn't have been so expensive. And it might have been at Ipao. It probably would have been at Ipao Point. I remember, because this is not just a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. And we'll talk about this in the third part of this show, who's to blame for losing the money. And that's the third thing we'll talk about. But I want to also talk about who's to blame for there being no Guam Memorial Hospital, no new Guam Memorial Hospital right now. And I'll tell you, it's both parties. It's whoever has been in power. And kind of, in a sense, not entirely the fault of the two governors who tried this. Now, how they went about things, they probably could have done a much better job in how they went about wanting to effectuate their separate visions, and you can fault them for that. But these are the two people who have, over the past 15, 16 years, tried to build a new Guam Memorial Hospital. In Eddie Calvo's case, whenever Eddie Calvo had something phenomenal that he wanted to do, some great vision that he wanted to do, whether it was Hagutnya redevelopment, building a new hospital, giving GMH the resources it needed so it wasn't constantly needing new money for a bunch of different, like, very relevant financial reasons, finance reasons, right? Or whether it was being the first governor in the nation to attempt to implement universal pre-K up to the age of 2 years old, or to give the Department of Education more money, or to do spending cuts to fix the structural imbalance in the general fund. All of these really big things Eddie Calvo wanted to do was stopped every step of the way by then Speaker Judy Wampat, the same person who the Guam Education Board has hired to be the superintendent of education, a politician through and through and through, who stopped progress at every step that Eddie Calvo wanted, including building a new Guam Memorial Hospital. Fast forward to Governor Lulian Guerrero, and she wants to build a new hospital, and people stand in the way. And this song, now she's not an angel in this either. She's done things that were not good. She's done things that have been wrong. She's done things that have been opaque, you would say, unethical maybe. She and her administration have misstepped when it came to the land issue. According to an order and a ruling of the court, the administration will tell you, oh, it's just because of this technical thing. But still, a ruling of the court said, you guys did it wrong. And this was about the taking of private property. And so the person who has really stood in the way of the governor, this time, is Attorney General Douglas Moylan. And yes, he has some fault in this, but also this is such a complicated issue that you just also have to think, well, didn't he have a right to be suspicious, considering everything that we now know about the financial situation, the audited financial situation of the government of Guam, and basically the lies that have been told to us by the administration? And then there's the legislature that could have done something, could have heeded the governor's advice and concerns and sense of urgency, but chose not to, chose to have its cojones shriveled back up into their orifices in order to be able to be like, you know what, let's just have the courts figure this out. But the governor was saying the entire time, if we wait that long and we know that the law is on our side, we're going to lose all of this money. And at the same time, by the same argument, by the same benefit of the doubt that we give the attorney general, you got to give that same benefit of the doubt to the legislature. Didn't they have a right to be suspicious about the administration as well? And so we're in this entire mess because, one, petty politics, as always. Two, people don't know how to communicate with each other. Three, the suspicion that not just lingers, but has grown about this administration and its ability to be honest, forthcoming, and, well, I mean, there are all the allegations of the stealing of money. And at the end of all of that, we don't have a new hospital. And at the end of this exercise, we're going to lose millions of dollars in federal funds that should have gone to building a new hospital. And so part of the saga has been resolved by the court. And so I'm going to read the administration's news release, but it is highly unfair. It's an unfair news release, I think. And it, of course, and as has been the attitude of this administration, nothing is their fault. Everything is everybody else's fault. But the point remains that the court sided with them. And so here's what the governor's office released on Friday night. Governor Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero today welcomed a decisive ruling from the Supreme Court of Guam confirming that the governor possesses constitutional authority under the Organic Act to establish hospitals and public health services, and that the Attorney General cannot use local law as a veto to block the expenditure of federal funds for a new hospital project. In its judgment issued today, the Supreme Court held that the Organic Act gives the governor the power to establish, maintain, and operate hospitals and public health services. Oh. The court further ruled that the Attorney General, quote, cannot use 5 GCA subsection 5150. That's the subsection of the procurement law that says that the Attorney General has to sign off on things above a certain threshold. As a veto power that prevents the governor from expending federal funds to establish a hospital, end quote. Instead, disputes regarding executive authority must be resolved through judicial review. They didn't quite explain that, but what I think that means, and don't quote me on this, but what I think it means is if the Attorney General has a problem with something that the governor is doing, then the Attorney General, if he has standing, and I suppose in this case he has standing because he's the one who's supposed to be signing off on things, right? He would have to bring that matter to the court for review. So I guess the onus would be on him, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the lawyers who are watching this can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what this means. Okay, quote. This is a quote from the governor. This ruling is clear, decisive, and confirms what we have maintained from the very beginning. The law does not give any attorney general the power to unilaterally block a governor from building a hospital with federal funds, end quote. Okay, I think that's a fair scrutiny from the governor, but it just gets worse from here. She says, the people of Guam deserve a modern hospital. Okay, that's true. Today's ruling removes any doubt that the Organic Act grants the governor the authority to move forward with that mission, end quote. That's kind of open-ended, and I don't think that that's entirely what the Supreme Court said. Like, the Supreme Court did not say that the governor has like 100% dominating and like carte blanche authority to do whatever she wants, even if it's about establishing a hospital. But anyway, quote, unfortunately, being right does not give us back the time that was wasted while the Attorney General and the legislature played these political and legal games, the governor said. Okay, I want to take a step back from that. While it is true that this lawsuit that the lawsuits that the Attorney General has filed has caused delay in the development of the new hospital, I think it's also true that the suspicions that the Attorney General had or has are valid suspicions, considering everything else that swarms around the administration, from the contracts that have gone, the more than $1 million in contracts that have gone to the profit of the lieutenant governor's family, to the, think of Comfort Cuts and the Tiguac Cemetery, right, as just a fraction of that, of what has really transpired since the lieutenant governor became the lieutenant governor, to the PUA scandal, to the not just at least $22 million in question costs of federal funds in the 2024 fiscal year alone. But more importantly, the disclaimer opinion, I can't remember the name of the opinion, but the really, really bad opinion that the auditors gave that basically said that they can't find the documents to substantiate the spending of federal funds. You think about all these things swarming around the administration, involving the administration, and you just cannot blame the AG and the legislature for having their suspicions and wanting to take things a little more slowly in committing not just $104 million in federal funds that nobody wants to pay back because we don't have that kind of money to just be giving away or to send back to the federal government. I'm saying if we were to spend that money, locally, I mean, using federal funds, and then the feds say, "Hey, you spent this the wrong way. We're going to have to recover those funds, and now you're going to have to use local funds in order to pay us back." Like that's just not something that should be done, right? So you can't blame the AG and the legislature for having their suspicions, but when the governor says that they're the ones who played political and legal games and they're the ones who wasted time, I want to kind of go back to the beginning of all of this and how it was the governor who wasted time when she decided that she was going to move forward with this process under the cover of darkness without involving anybody in the very beginning. And there being, and her saying that remember, this Fidian area was not the very first place that she wanted to have this hospital. The very first place was just a little bit more south of the location that is pegged right now. It was, remember, Eagles Field, and Eagles Field, a portion of the property belongs to the Navy, and the governor said that she was in these talks to I think it was to lease the land or something like that. And then we find out that there's a letter that the Secretary of the Navy sent to the governor saying that he recognizes that the property is excess property. And if something is declared to be excess property, if it had been taken a step further, he said he had, I believe what that letter earnestly said was that it was going to be declared as excess property, excess federal land. And according to the law, if something is declared as excess federal property and is returned to the government of Guam, it goes into the inventory of the Ancestral Lands Commission in order to be given back to the original landowners. And so there was this complete opacity, and that was the cause of the original delay in this entire thing. So the governor needs to take some responsibility here as well. So anyway, she says, while we are grateful that the Supreme Court has now provided clarity, these delays have placed federal funding at risk and reduced the amount of time available to put those funds to work for the people of Guam. End quote. The governor also noted that despite repeated warnings that delay could place federal funding at risk, Republican legislative leaders chose inaction while the matter worked its way through the courts. That's true. Okay. It raises an interesting election year question of whether the legislature and AG will be held accountable for obstructing the project. Now, this is an interesting line because the governor is telegraphing that they're going to go after the AG and the Republican legislature. The governor is a Democrat. She's part of the Democrat Party. There's like different parts of the Democrat Party. She's part of the Democrat Party that it's her part of the Democrat Party, and her part of the Democrat Party wants Josh Tenorio to basically usher in a third term of the Lou and Josh era, right? And they are completely opposed to Doug Moylan. They're completely opposed. They want their own Democrat majority so that if Josh Tenorio becomes governor, they can do whatever, right? The cronyism continues, the hiring continues, the contracts I mean, it's just the pua. Anyway, so what's interesting about this telegraph is what's unsaid here and what has been unsaid over the past 2-3 months. And I've been asking this question the past few months of the governor's office is, are we going to have to give back any funds? As each month has gone by, it's been like, hey, can we have some like timelines here of like, let's say the legislature changes procurement law to allow specifically for the governor to do her infrastructure projects so that we can liquidate the funds by December 31, 2026. You know, like, can you give us an amount of money on that based on this date of things, if this court were to find in favor of whatever? And I think it was May. We were looking at a May date, and this happened in May, right? What could be done, or like how much could be liquidated and how much could we conceivably lose? For them to not answer any of those questions and to wait until now, basically 2 months before the primary election, 4 months before the general election, it kind of tells you, and then to telegraph a punch like that about the election itself, how they're going to use this in the election itself. It tells you everything that you need to know. I'm sorry. it gives you every reminder that you need about what this administration does and how it uses the levers of power and the resources at its disposal to attack its political enemies. Continuing, for months, we were told to wait. We were told the courts would decide. Well, yeah, that's true. That's how this court system thing works, right? Today, the Supreme Court has decided, and it confirmed what we said from the beginning, the governor said. Unfortunately, while Guam waited, time was lost. And when federal funding comes with deadlines, lost time has real consequences. I mean, that's whatever. There's a couple more things to this news release, but she says the administration is focused on moving forward as quickly as possible and maximizing the amount of federal funding that can still be invested in a modern hospital for the people of Guam. On the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk to you about the news that the amount of money that the governor obligated by December 31, 2024, the obligation deadline for those ARPA SLRF funds, $104 million. Recently, we found out through a PDN report by Joe Tyson II that amount moved down to, or reduced to, $83.5 million. And so the question is, how did that amount go down when we've been told this entire time that the governor could not expend this money for anything other than what it was obligated for? And then what did they spend the money on? We'll talk about that on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. It is now 9 a.m. on Sunday, May 31, 2026. My name is Troy Torres. Welcome to the Sunday News Analysis. Throughout, ever since the December 31, 2024 obligation deadline, sort of like a gotcha movement that the governor had against Therese Terlahi, Chris Barnett, some of the Republicans who were wanting the governor to build the hospital over at EPAL Point. Oh, and the doctors too. It was her gotcha movement against some of the doctors who were just completely opposed to the whole Manilao location, right? And she was like, hey, look, we obligated it. There's nothing we can do about it now. It's $104 million. And it must be spent on these infrastructure projects over at the Manilao area. And it had to be done. It had to be the water and wastewater and the power infrastructure. All good things, right? Like, that's not a bad thing or anything, right? But maybe how the governor went about this, just like how she's gone about this entire thing the entire time, maybe not been the wisest thing in the world. Actually, kind of like petty politics, right? How she's gone about it. And the attorney general starts to get involved, and he's like, hey, look, you guys don't even have the land yet. How are you able to do all this stuff? And then he's like, hey, how? And then that caused the governor's office and GUR or whatever to really like rush toward this whole land thing. They did this whole land condemnation thing, and the attorney general was like, hey, I don't think the way you're doing this land condemnation is right. It doesn't sound legal or whatever. He scored victories there. There were crucial victories in that fight. And because of that, one of the landowners is, and I was reading about this, one of the landowners purchased the property for $2.5 million in 2018. GURA was trying to condemn this property in 2024, 25 or something like that for like $2.6 million, just $100,000 more. We damn well know
that the price of properties has drastically increased since then. Those guys were going to get screwed. So, it was the Attorney General's intervention that that assisted that private landowner to not get screwed, right? So now the governor, according to a news report, is going to purchase this land for $5 million. So one of the things that that was, wait, hold on, okay, stand by. Sorry, I had to do something gross, and I didn't want you to see or hear that. So one of the one of the things that that pops out in this entire scandal as of late, not scandal, but controversy as of late, is that there's this throughout this entire time, ever since December 31, 2024, the governor had her gotcha moment, $104 million. It's always been $104 million. All of a sudden, as of the April report, the amount has dropped to $83.5 million, according to a story by Joe Titan II in the PDN. And the story doesn't say what the money was spent on, but it does provide it does provide information on how the money could legally have been spent on something other than what it was obligated for on December 31, 2024. And here's another example of the administration not being transparent about things and not just saying, hey, look, we spent all of this money, because it's like $20 million on this. I mean, I haven't found information online that would show where the money was spent, and maybe we should ask about it, right? But we do have information. We did verify something that is in Joe Titano's story about something that the governor said. And it was, according to the story, the governor told Joe Titano that, the reporter, that there was a rule change that the U.S. Department of Treasury instituted that allowed governments that had not yet liquidated the SLRF funds, the ARPA funds that remain. And Guam is like one of a few jurisdictions that is not close to the 90% of liquidation. We are only at 75%, apparently, according to the report. To go ahead and redirect those funds. And it's not just to anything. So the governor is, when you read this stuff, like I looked up the interim rule change, the interim final rule change online at the Treasury Department. The governor has been right this whole time that you cannot just direct the money to whatever. So when they say just give it to GMH, so you can give it to the current GMH only if if you're giving it to something that already has been obligated by December 31, 2024. So out of that $104 million, right? Let's just take the $83.5 million that remains. Out of the $83.5 million that remains, if there is something, let's say Guam Memorial Hospital, I'm just pretending here, okay? This is not a real thing. Let's say Guam Memorial Hospital obligated $14 million for the renovation of the maternity ward over at the current GMH. And they obligate, I don't even know how this would work. Like, how do you obligate it and not have the money, right? Because that sounds like it would be against the law. But if they wanted to redirect the funds from the new GMH, as long as there was already an obligation prior to December 31, 2024 for that maternity ward, the governor could redirect those funds. And there's a portal. This is not like writing a letter and getting someone's approval. There's a portal that does these fund movements. And so you have to prove certain things, right? And then you can dedicate the money that way. We don't know what has happened in the intervening period to that $20 million. Like, we don't know what it's gone to or whatever, but it could not have gone to the water, wastewater, power for the new hospital location, because all of that has been under litigation. I'm not even sure whether things can move forward now, because as I understand it, there are still pending court cases. So I don't know how quickly the governor's office is able to move on new hospital development using the remaining $83.5 million. But one of the things that was told in the story was that $5 million would be going to purchase the property. That's not the Dr. Joel Joseph property. It's the other property owned by, I think, a Chinese developer. That's the one that we're going to use $5 million to purchase that outright. I'm not sure if that's ARPA funds or if that's local funds or if that's another source of federal funds, but so that explains, or that helps to explain how the governor was able to legally use that money. But what's still not explained is, what did she use the money on? And that still needs to be explained to the people of Guam. And the governor in the same story talked about how millions of dollars, she didn't say how much, but she said a lot of money is going to have to go back to the federal government, because there's not going to be a way to liquidate those funds by December 31, 2026, the liquidation deadline. There's actually a deadline before that. I believe it's September 30, 2026. And that has to do with transportation projects, but I don't know of any. I don't think any of that's transportation funding. So the liquidation deadline would be December 31, 2026. And on the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk about who we need to blame about sending back all that money, whatever that amount of money is going to be that's sent back after December 31, 2026. We need to be ready to blame a few people about all of that. On the other side of the break, we'll talk about that. Stick with us.
We delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off, or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
The stuff's hitting the spot. I think they're all to blame. I think the entire lot of our elected officials are to blame for this. Good morning. It's 9:11 a.m. on Sunday, May 31, 2026, when the government of Guam has to give back, we don't know how much, but apparently millions of dollars in federal funds that was meant for our use to deal with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And like, when you compare Guam against many other places in the nation and in the world, and the bounce back from COVID-19, we are way behind the curve. Like our economy, I mean, I get it. Prices have gone up everywhere, but the ability for other places, other economies, other states, other territories, other nations to bounce back. Like, look at tourism thriving in all these different places, and look at Tuman, and look at all the places that are closed, including the DFS Galleria. Look at the bailouts that we have to do over at the concessionaire over at the airport. Look at how dismal the economic situation is, not just for the business community, but more importantly, for everyday families who are not connected or who do not have the financial security of a government, whether it's local or federal government job. It's a pretty bad, it's a pretty bleak situation. So did we use the money that the feds went and borrowed against the future of the United States so that we all throughout the pandemic period and in the post-pandemic period in our present situation could bounce back from this once in a century thing? And the answer is, and for Guam, no. No, we didn't do what was wise, apparently, because we haven't bounced back. And so when we find out that we're going to lose millions of dollars in what was supposed to help us to bounce back, I think we should all be pissed about it, precisely because our personal financial situation, the economic situation of our families sucks so much. And there might be a tendency to look at the governor and be like, hey, you know, she really tried to go to hospital. But that's not the end of that story. And it certainly doesn't represent the beginning of the story. Because from the beginning of this story, if the governor had just been better at communicating with other elected officials, if she wasn't planning things in the dark or only with her people, if she was willing to cooperate with the legislature and the attorney general just a little bit more and open herself up to public scrutiny and answer questions or have her team do that, maybe all of this stuff wouldn't have happened. If she was willing to take legal advice from other people, aside from the people who surround her, maybe that whole land condemnation thing wouldn't have been necessary. If she was willing to work with senators and to appeal to their better consciences, maybe she would have gotten exactly what she wanted from the legislature in terms of local appropriations or authority or support or whatever. And even if the attorney general had dug in his heels, but maybe he wouldn't have dug in his heels if she had just worked with him. But she refused to work with anyone. And then when the going got tough, that's when she wanted to work with everybody and started blaming everybody for not bending over backwards to work with her in a very tight situation where things were already in litigation. And then there's the attorney general, right? And yes, it was his lawsuits that caused these delays. But then you just have to wonder, like, well, I mean, think about it put yourself, or just think about it from your perspective. Aren't you already suspicious of this administration? And if you have your suspicions of this administration and how it uses money and whether it tells the truth and how opaque it has been about certain things, how non-transparent it has been, don't you think the attorney general should also have his suspicions? No matter what you think about the guy, right? Like, don't you think he's right to be suspicious of the administration? And maybe he took things a little too far, maybe. But I don't think his original baseline, I don't think his baseline of suspicion has been incorrect. And the governor did want to go pretty fast about things, about the spending of all this money after a certain point. And the delay prior to that point was really her fault. And then there's the legislature. And the governor warned the legislature, and the governor ended up being right. The governor said, look, you got to intervene. The law is on my side. The attorney general is wrong. And the governor provided the legislature with the case law and all that stuff, right? And the legislature wouldn't lift a finger. The legislature said, basically, let this play out in court. And the governor was like, you know, if this plays out in court, it's going to take a long time. We don't know when it's going to end, and we're going to lose the money. And the governor ended up being right. So this is also the legislature's fault. But Same as the Attorney General. Can you blame the legislature? Can you blame them for being suspicious? Because, and I'll put it to you again, if you yourself are suspicious about how the governor spends our money and how the governor spends federal funds based on all kinds of things, not just this hospital issue, but all sorts of facts and allegations that have surfaced over the past couple of years. If you yourself have those suspicions about the governor and about her administration, don't you expect your legislature to have those same suspicions? And so, my friends, the truly objective opinion to have here, I think, in my personal opinion, when we have to send back all of this money, is whether they like it or not, no matter what their intentions were, no matter how good their intentions and their motives were, this is all of their fault. Ain't not just one person at fault for this. This is all of their fault if we have to give back all of that money. But there's something else. And I think this is probably the more important thing, because if you want to single anyone out, I think that there is a lesson that we learn back in the second or the third grade of social studies. And it answers the question as to, well, who's really at fault? Remember, we learned in second or third grade social studies about presidents and about the famous things that they said, and how, just these things that really made sense in the public consciousness, right? And there was a president. It's been a long time since second or third grade social studies, but I'm pretty sure it was President Truman. And in the context of the spending of the public's money, he says, the buck stops here. The buck stopped at the executive's desk, at the president's desk. This, my friends, if we want to ultimately cast blame and separate anybody from all of this, is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's fault. Just as it was at the end of Governor Calvo's term, Governor Eddie Calvo's fault that there wasn't a new hospital. Despite all of the people who were in his way, we elected these two people, Governor Calvo and Governor Leon Guerrero, to have as part of their duties the ability to gather the forces of the government together to implement their vision. And part of their vision, each of them, was to build a new hospital. And there were forces who were against them. But because of how they managed people and communication, they failed to do that. They both failed to do that by the end of their terms. And yes, there are other people to blame. In Eddie Calvo's case, it was absolutely Judy Wampat. In Lou Leon Guerrero's case, it's a combination of the Attorney General and the legislature. But at the end of the day, it was those two governors who were responsible for building us those hospitals, the hospital. Eddie Calvo, you can give him kind of a pass because it's not like he had the kind of money that Lou Leon Guerrero had access to. All these federal funds. It's even worse for Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. The buck stopping at her desk means something even more, simply because she had access to the money thanks to Congressman Nicholas and Congressman Kilili. And now we're going to have to give it back. So if you want to blame anyone, blame Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a wonderful day. Blessed Sunday to you all. And we'll see you for the Troy Torres show tonight at 7:30 p.m. where I think we're going to talk about the Guam Department of Education. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Have a blessed day. God bless.